failed to follow up on a report of a possible breach on Hillary Clinton's private email server. God, this story goes on and on. Let's bring in Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, who has been pushing for a second special counsel to investigate the Clinton probe. Congressman, what I can tell is that Mr. Strzok knew that there was some abnormality with the metadata on Mrs. Clinton's email server. I know I don't want to get too technical, but in other words, there were grounds to take a look at this because we know how the secret information that was being put through this server. But in the end, he never followed up.
Yeah,
right.
And that shouldn't surprise us. After all, this is the same guy who changed the now famous exoneration letter from the term gross negligence, which is a crime, to extreme carelessness. So we all thought the fix was in with the Clinton investigation at the top levels of the FBI. Now that we've seen the Strzok and Page text messages and get this story, we know the fix was in because this is the agent. This is the super agent, Peter Strzok, former deputy head of counterintelligence, who ran the entire Clinton investigation. He interviewed Mills, he interviewed Abidan, and he interviewed Secretary Clinton. And then it shouldn't surprise us that he didn't follow up on something that was pretty darn important.
And you mentioned the editing because Jim Comey at the time said it was reasonably likely that hostile actors gained access to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's private email account. That was watered down to say it was merely possible. That's a huge difference.
Right. So he changed that part of the exoneration letter to merely possible. He also changed the overall view of this from a gross negligence, which is, again, tracking with the criminal standard, tracking with the statute itself, to extreme carelessness. What is also interesting is, of course, this is the same agent who launched the Trump-Russia investigation.
Right.
He's the agent who said this George Papadopoulos issue, which has also had some new information come out in the last several days. He's the one who started the Russian investigation. So think about it. The guy who interviewed Mills, Abidan, Clinton, ran the Clinton investigation, changed the exoneration letter, didn't follow up on this important breach of her computer, of her server, is also the guy who launches the Trump-Russia investigation.
Yeah,
that's why we need a second special counsel.
It's not exactly difficult to connect the dots, is it? Next one for you, Congressman. President Trump calling out the Democrats for dragging their heels on DACA. Now, this morning he tweeted this. Total inaction on DACA by Dems. Where are you? Question mark. A deal can be made. Your response to that, Congressman?
Yeah, we could do the right thing, and the right thing is consistent with what the American people said on Election Day.
Yeah.
They were very clear about this because President Trump campaigned on this. Build the border security wall. Stop chain migration, get rid of the visa lottery, deal with asylum policy, deal with this crazy sanctuary city policy we see all over the country, deal with all those things, and then, oh, by the way, we can also deal with these DACA individuals in the appropriate fashion. So let's have that kind of legislation passed. That's what we all campaigned on. That's consistent with the mandate of the election. And more importantly, that's exactly what is in Chairman Goodlatte, Bob Goodlatte, Chairman of the Judiciary. That's what's in his legislation that we in the Freedom Caucus and we in the House Republican Conference are trying to get passed.
You know, it's interesting, Congressman, because yesterday we had protests outside the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Protesters, dreamers, upset with the lack of action and ability to negotiate by the Democrats. So, you know, those that would technically believe that the Democrats would be behind them, they're kind of turning on themselves a little bit.
Right. I think there's an agreement that could be had that's consistent with what the American people want, consistent with what's best for this country. There's an agreement there, but I do think many Democrats are more concerned about politics and the political benefit they think this will give them this fall than they are with solving problems and doing what the American people elected us to do.
Fascinating stuff, as always. Congressman Jim Jordan, thanks so much, Congressman. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Joining us tonight, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Trump, now a Fox Business national security strategist, and always it is great to see you, Dr. Gorka. And let's turn to first the most recent revelations that the FBI informant about whom they say he was absolutely pivotal to launching their investigation. Pure bull and nonsense, but nonetheless, we find out he had significant connections to the Clintons. Are you shocked?
No, because I've been following the Clintons ever since those cattle futures. Do you remember those cattle futures? What was it, 30 years ago, that suddenly made this woman who'd never dealt in them before suddenly very wealthy?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. She made $100,000 with a Chicago commodity trader.
It's the Clinton crime cartel, and nothing surprises me. I just can't get over the cognitive dissonance of over a year in the media talking about collusion with regards to the Trump administration, and not one scintilla of evidence. But on the other side, we have this former MI6 agent connected to the Kremlin, being paid millions of dollars by Hillary Clinton, the DNC, now an Australian diplomat working hand in glove to support the Clinton Foundation.
But don't you love the fact that that brings some closure to it? It connects the Clinton Foundation with all that is the Clinton corruption machine, and here we have a phony dossier that was organized by the FBI itself, because they are the ones who chose to believe those that it did. And it was very convenient to their purpose.
Let's look at the enormity of that issue. This is opposition research paid for by one candidate in a presidential campaign to attack the other candidate's campaign and illegally acquire through her friends a surveillance warrant because the origins of that dossier wasn't revealed to the judge. You know, Mark Levin said it best. Hillary Clinton bought a surveillance warrant against the Trump campaign. We don't do that in America, but
see, I actually think that's a little convoluted on the part of Mark. I think he could have been more direct. The fact is, the Clinton campaign and the DNC were buying everything. They bought a nomination from their party
as well. Yes,
and they did so through all of this just sordid, rancid corruption that follows them wherever they set up shop. And thank God the American people didn't let them set up shop at 1600 Pennsylvania.
We dodged a massive artillery shell, not a bullet. We dodged an artillery shell when Donald J. Trump won the election. That's for certain, Lou.
This call now for a second special counsel. The idea that a second special counsel could be put together, it puts the pressure directly on the Attorney General, because leaders of the Republican Party, today Trey Gowdy, and most importantly, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, adding their names and their standing to the call. Do you think it'll happen? And what do you think happens when all of this is before the Attorney General? Is he capable? Is he capable of doing the right thing?
I know you're not a fan of the AG. Congressman Gates made a very good point. He said, we can uncover the facts, but we can't handcuff anybody. We can't arrest anybody. And this is the problem. I've never been a fan of the special counsel. I don't care if the president, you know, whether it's a Democrat in office or a Republican, they always go beyond their mandate. They always end up fishing. I've said DOJ and FBI is rotten at the top after 8 years of Obama.
So what do we do about the call for a second special counsel?
I think they have the mandates already. DOJ, FBI has the mandates. They need to go out to the field offices, get out of the swamp, go to New Mexico, go to Oregon, pick people with a sterling record who have no connections to the swamp, and empower them to investigate the corruption. They have the mandate.
Should the president fire Jeff Sessions if he does not?
I know personally, I know the president is not satisfied with the Attorney General.
We all do. He's made that clear to everyone.
Yeah.
Troubling question for the FBI. Now, why didn't the Bureau tell them that the guy who triggered the Russia investigation actually had a multi-million-dollar connection to the Clinton Foundation? Reporter Alison Spann has been investigating Australian diplomat Alexander Downer. She now joins us to discuss her article just published in The Hill tonight. Alison, great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so now this is like a cast of characters. This is like a mystery novel. But tell us about Alexander Downer and his connection to all of this Papadopoulos character, and why it's important.
So if you remember, in the summer of 2016, Alexander Downer was the one who came out with his evidence about George Papadopoulos. He said he had a drink with him in a London bar, and Papadopoulos revealed to him that he knew that Russia had some dirt on Hillary or might have some damaging emails to her. So he's the one that actually gave that information to his government. The Australian government gave it to the U.S. government, and that launched the whole Russia probe into Trump-Russia collusion.
Yeah.
Well, now we find out that Alexander Downer has a tie to the Clintons.
Now, what a tie. Now, he's at a bar in London. He runs into Papadopoulos. The circumstances around how he ran into him is interesting. You addressed that slightly in your piece.
Right.
But now, fast forward 2 months after he sees him in that bar, Australia brings us to the FBI.
Right.
It took 2 months. That's kind of interesting.
Took 2 months.
But then you find out that of Downer's connection to the Clinton Foundation is...
He secured them a grant for $25 million from the Australian government, funded by taxpayer dollars, to go towards AIDS prevention and treatment in Asia.
Oh, that's great. AIDS prevention. I mean, what could be wrong with that? So $25 million foreign money from Australia goes to the Clinton Foundation. Now, is there any question about how that money was used or whether it was fraudulently obtained?
So there was an audit that was conducted 3 years later, and it just wanted to basically go through and see what that project had achieved. Now, they did achieve some great things as far as getting those children the antiretroviral drugs that they needed and might otherwise not have been given a chance to get. But there were some questions about the money in that case and whether it was handled properly. And in fact, the report goes on to say that it was so mishandled that it was actually detrimental to the project. And they were given a score of 2 out of 6 for handling the money. And
2 out of 6?
Yeah, 2 out of 6. Now, the effectiveness...
That's typical Clintons, 2 out of 6. That's actually a high mark for them in handling finances or ethics. I just want to read this. It's from the Clinton Foundation audit. Some management weaknesses were noted with human resource management, the absence of readily available and useful budget information showing exactly how funds were spent, and project monitoring. So it's not a resounding plus, but the more important thing is, why wasn't this revealed? That's a big grant. That's a connection to the opposition candidate, to Donald Trump. He happens to be in this bar. He happens to meet this Papadopoulos guy. He happens to funnel the information. And he's not a minor figure. He's a well-known liberal politician in Australia who's buddies with the Clintons.
And I think that's what a lot of members of our Congress are asking now. We talked to Jim Jordan for our story, and he was shocked when he heard this information.
So you brought it to Jordan?
We brought it to these congressional committees who
They didn't even know.
No, they didn't know. So we actually
work.
brought this information to these congressional committees who are investigating this case. They had no idea. The FBI did not disclose this information to them. So they're shocked, and
That's unbelievable.
they want this to be investigated. And in fact, Jordan said that he wants a second special counsel because, as he says, that the FBI cannot investigate themselves.
This is one more example. First, you had the dossier being funded by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. That wasn't revealed to the FISA judge.
Right.
And now you have this.
Well, and there's actually 4 pieces of information they didn't reveal. The dossier was funded by the DNC and Clinton. Sidney Blumenthal, who is a close Clinton supporter, was funneling the information to Christopher Steele through the State Department. And then you had the Yahoo article that was quoted in the FISA application was written by Michael Isikoff, who got his information from Christopher Steele. And then now we have this connection between Alexander Downer and the Clintons.
Now, say that backwards really fast.
I know I know the Russia investigation is very complicated, but yes, we have 4 instances now. All 4 pieces of information came from people who at least knew the Clintons.
Just for fun, this guy Sam Nunberg, we are totally out of time, but Sam Nunberg he worked for the, he worked for the Trump campaign for 5 seconds. Anyway, he's refusing to speak to Mueller. He was on CNN earlier tonight, and I'm sorry, this is too funny not to play to you. Let's watch.
So, Sam, I have to ask you one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's an awkward question to ask, but, I've interviewed you before. You're sitting very close to me.
Yes.
We talked earlier about what people in the White House were saying about you.
Yeah.
Talking about whether you were drinking or on drugs or whatever they had happened today. Talking to you, I have smelled alcohol on your breath.
Well, I have not had a drink.
You haven't had a drink, so that's not...
No.
So I just, because it is the talk out there, again, I know it's awkward, let me just give you the question that you can categorically answer that. No, you haven't had a drink today?
My answer is no.
Thoughts?
It was painful to watch. I don't know how I would react in a situation like that.
But he's not testifying before it. I don't know him at all. I mean, he was hired, fired. I mean, but he's not testifying. He's not talking to Mueller. I mean,
sounds like he could possibly be facing some jail time if he refuses to show up in court and doesn't provide those documents. So just another piece of the puzzle for this.
Maybe he just
Russia
has really
investigation.
bad halitosis or something, or he chews gin and tonic gum or something. Like, who could have been anything. Allison, I hate to drag you in on that mess, but I'm sorry.
not drunk.
That was what. Allison spanned the hill. I'm not drunk. That is the quote of the day. I'm just kidding. Great reporting, you and Solomon.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, chaos, turmoil, madness. Those are the words thrown around by critics describing the Trump White House. Someone who once had a front row seat to all of it says ignore the talk. The president's process may be different, but it's getting great results. Here's former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus.